Our scripture today comes from the 4th chapter of Matthew. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." And Jesus said to him, "Again, it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." And then again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their splendor. And he said to him, "All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly the angels came and waited on him. Now when Jesus heard that John had been arrested, he withdrew to Galilee. He left Nazareth and made his home in Capernaum by the sea, in the territory of Zebulun and Naphtali, so that what had been spoken through the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled. Land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, on the road by the sea, across the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and for those who sat in the region and shadow of death, light has dawned. From that time, Jesus began to proclaim, "Repent, for the kingdom of God has come near."
I feel like we should be handing off the baton. I'm coming back. Chris is now on her way to Minneapolis, where she is going to be spending the week in her Doctor of Ministry program. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. I have to confess, it's really good to be back. I miss you guys when I'm gone, and feels like it's been a while. I mean, now I have to confess, the first Sunday after Christmas, I did not miss anybody. I was just exhausted. But as time went on, I had a great time. Went to the Oregon coast, and spent some time with Melanie and family members and friends, and then alone at the beach, agating and praying and such, and then off to a ministers' conference in Florida. So I kind of hit both those coasts, but. Boy, it's hard to be away after some time. And with the start of the series, I was very cognizant of the fact that the series started last week, and I'm so excited about it. Because for years, I have really just come under more deeper and deeper understanding and intuition that this love that each of us experiences from time to time, this kind of magical, all-encompassing love and grace that just kind of takes us in moments and just holds everything together. There just aren't adequate words to describe that love and that grace. That you can go a whole lifetime in this faith and never quite feel like you can wrap your head around it even, or comprehend it, or describe it, certainly. And that really, you could probably take 1,000 faiths, all trying to describe this love and this grace, this presence, and still never feel like you quite got it. Because it just keeps getting deeper and grander and more amazing the more you experience it and the more you reflect on it. And when I have started over the years to kind of look at Judaism deeply, look at Islam deeply, as well as my own faith deeply, it just feels so much like 3 giant faiths, that encompass the majority of the world's population, just trying to describe the wonder and the awe and the joy of that single moment that really does bring everything together that has no words to it. That moment that we receive this love. And something turns inside us and says, I want to orient my life around this love and nothing else. Yeah. So while it may take more than 1,000 faces to describe, it seems like it just takes one moment to comprehend and take in and then act on. So it's a great joy to be back and be part of this series, which kind of gives us a little glimpse of looking at Jesus, this person that's so important to us, and then looking at it through the faith, through the eyes of a Christian, but also of a Jew and of a Muslim. And I think that what you'll find if you kind of hang with this series is that Jesus and this faith that he was attached to just keeps getting deeper and deeper and more wonderful the more you kind of hear other perspectives on it, all pointing to this wonder. So I'm very pleased that when all it took was one phone call to each of these two gentlemen, Rabbi Ari Azrael of Temple Israel and Dr. Saeed Mohiudden, who is not only the director or the professor of medicine and cardiology at Creighton, but also the head of the Islamic Institute with the Tri-Faith, told one phone call, and they absolutely said, yes, we would love to join you for this series to reflect on the person of Jesus with you. And so I'm going to invite Dr. Mohiudden up here at this time. Thanks for coming back. I saw the video from last week, and it was wonderful. And I would just note also Martin Luther King Sunday, you were a few years ago elected, you got a drum major award. A drum major award. What was that? What was the drum major award about? I turned it on for you.
Thank you. I don't know whether you know that Creighton University is a very liberal organization. It recognizes all faiths, and although it's a Christian university, a Jesuit Christian university, it does recognize the right of all the people to practice their religion and welcomes all religions. And our faculty is made up of almost all religions in the world. What they do is yearly they award a Martin Luther King Drum Major Award to a person who has done something to bring people together. And I was honored by this award because of my work with Tri-Faith. And what I said at the time was really people who deserve this award are the members of the Tri-Faith, rather than a person.
Yeah, I had not realized that Martin Luther King just called and said, I'm just a drum major.
That's he was asked, how would you define yourself? He said, think of me as a drum major.
Well, it's good to have you as a drum major and as a person of faith
Thank you.
joining us today. And Rabbi Azrael is also going to join us, but unfortunately, right around Christmas time, he suffered a very bad back injury and is still in recovery. And so he's hoping to join us as early as next week, if not, then hopefully the week after. But until then, we have him on video. I sat down via Skype with him last week. But we're going to look at this passage that we just heard about Jesus' temptations in the wilderness, really from three perspectives this morning. One is about the role of wilderness in each of our traditions, and then look at who is Satan in each of the traditions, and then what is temptation, both through the eyes of our tradition and maybe a little bit personally too. And in deference to our elder brother in the faith, Rabbi Ari Azrael, not that he's older than us, but his faith is older than either one of ours. We're going to defer to our elder brother first to hear about the role of wilderness in Judaism. What is the role of wilderness in the Hebrew tradition?
Oh my God, it has a whole book about the wilderness. The English name of the book is Numbers, which is such a wrong name. In Hebrew is Bamidbar, in the desert, in the wilderness. By the way, Midbar in Hebrew, desert, has the same root of a word, words. So there's a lot of conversation and dialogue taking place in an isolated desert. So that's the irony of the name of the book. Because in the desert, we receive the 10 utterance of God. So the desert is a place where the Israelites spent 40 years walking around for 39 years when they were able to accomplish the journey in 3 days. So these 40 years, similar to the usage of the number 40 in Christian tradition and in Muslim tradition, was there to cleanse, to create a new generation that never tasted slavery, never tasted alienation, in order for them to be able to conquer a promised land. Because it was easy to get the Jews out of Egypt, it was very hard, impossible to get Egypt out of the Jews. So that's why the desert has an incredible significant meaning about sometimes the importance of going to the desert, trying to discover who you are. There's a question in Jewish tradition, why would the 10 Commandments be given in the desert? Why couldn't he do it next door to the pyramids? They were already there. What is the significance of going to the desert? And the idea was that this is where they are open, they are free in a sense, without the lashes of the taskmasters, without the pressure from Pharaoh. So there was a need to go away in order to understand what the responsibilities are all about. So it's a powerful image. By the way, I want to thank you for doing this, and I'm saying hello to your congregation. I'm sorry I'm not there, but thank you for the invitation and the honor to be part of this dialogue.
Syed, what is the role of wilderness in the Muslim tradition?
The wilderness, it seems, that is an important part of almost all religions. In Islam, the wilderness is probably the best represented by the story of Prophet Muhammad. As you all know, Prophet was born in near Mecca, and Mecca is surrounded by desert and mountains. And Prophet in his adult life began to spend a lot of time in isolation in a cave in a mountain which is named Hijra, and it is where he spent a lot of time. And it was during that time when he was first received his message from God. And it really appears that what he was doing is preparing himself for his role to be the messenger from God. Although he was frightened and really was not ready to receive this message, but he clearly was preparing himself for this role which he had to as the messenger from God for the world.
Reminds me of what probably was going through Jesus' mind too. I mean, we covered last week the baptism, and really the baptism was probably the time when those threads in Jesus' life that maybe he wasn't even aware of, their connections, just kind of come together at the moment of that baptism. And he gets this incredible intuition about God's realm and his role within it. And it must have not just simply been a, "Ooh, isn't this wonderful" kind of feeling, but like a really scary thing. And am I nuts? And I need to sort this out. And it's interesting that the story, which is really, this is kind of Christianity's central story of wilderness, it says that after that baptism, the Spirit led him into the wilderness. It wasn't the devil that put him in the wilderness. It was the Holy Spirit that puts him there. And there he is to kind of trying to clarify, get it right, crystallize this intuition and figure out what is central to my call and what isn't. And it seems like there's a metaphor there too. Whenever we have these high spiritual experiences, as represented like in Jesus' baptism, it doesn't always go easy for us afterwards. We kind of think that, oh my God, I've just come into this awareness of this love and grace, and therefore life must go easy for me after this. But no, oftentimes it means, it's followed by a wilderness, an experience of emptiness. And it's a way of processing. The Spirit puts us into that place of processing. So sometimes our wilderness time isn't because something has gone wrong. It's actually because something is going right. And how often we, modern society with so much busyness and appointments here and there and everything else, I think the Spirit kind of cries out, hey, would you spend some time in, get empty now and again. Hear my still small voice and hear your own call in the wilderness. Well, let's take a look at, did you want to follow that? Or?
I just wanted to, again, that the similarity between the two religions is often unrecognized, and prophet's experience in the cave named Hira was also followed by intense feeling of, acute feeling of being not ready to receive this message, and that whether this was just a delusion, was this a reality? And he needed a lot of reassurance from his support, and particularly his wife, who reassured him that he was really the messenger from God.
I had, in my own personal path, had never really sunk in about how Jesus would have really been kind of terrified by this too, until I read about Muhammad's experience. Thought, oh yeah, Jesus probably would have felt that same thing. Yeah. Well, let's look at the role of Satan in the wilderness, and once again we want to defer to our elder brother in the faith. But I want to also note, just as a background, what Rabbi Azrael is going to be talking about. That Satan doesn't always appear as something that's overtly evil. If you look at this painting, this is a painting that William Blake did in the 19th century. That it's hard to tell which one is Satan and which one is Jesus in that one, and I think that's more instructive than perhaps than we think. Sometimes it's hard to tell. But let's hear Rabbi Azrael speak about the role of Satan. And he's going to actually approach this from the standpoint of ongoing Judaism after the biblical tradition.
In Judaism, Satan doesn't have any role nowadays. We don't have Satan to tempt us. What we have is good inclination and a bad inclination. So this is already built into us. This is our DNA. We have both of those inclinations, and most of our life, we need to manage them. They will be there forever. There's a wonderful story in the Talmud of the people that wanted to get rid of Satan or the evil inclination. So they captured him, put him in jail for 3 days. No one fell in love with anyone else. Business were all bankrupt. Chickens did not lay eggs. So they decided, as a result of it, to release him. But before they released him, the legend tells they took one eye, so he will be less active in our lives. But it's all inside of us, evil and good inclination. If we bring them together, we create a whole person, and that's how we humans can become holy. So it's not eliminating one of them, learning to live with them. So you'll never hear a Jew saying, Satan made me do it. It's all part of the free will that started in the story of Genesis, in paradise. Yeah, go ahead, taste the fruit from that tree, but please know that there are consequences. So most of our life, we are trying to work those two inclinations and make them actually complementary to what we are doing with our lives.
Well said. Syed, what is the role of Satan in Islam?
The story in the Muslim religion is that God created Adam and ordered all his angels to bow to him. And Iblis, or Shaitan, which is mentioned in Quran, refused to obey those orders on the ground that he was better, that he had more knowledge. He's one of the higher ranking angels in the God's kingdom. And he couldn't really bring himself to bow to this person who was made of clay and really had no knowledge. Whereas God had given him all the knowledge, and he was much superior to be able to really to bow down to this this person or this creation of God. And at that point, he was sent away from heaven, and was told that he has time. And that's the interesting part in Islamic context, that God gave him permission to persuade human beings from not obeying him. He allowed him that context, and he has time until the day of judgment. And we are all exposed to that now. But as Rabbi Israel said, there is a strong context of free will in Islam, that you have the right, you have the ability to judge, you have the ability to select, and you are responsible for what you do. There is really, as he said, it's not Shaitan's doing. It is really your own selection of what you do, and God will judge you accordingly.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that, the description of Satan in the Quran. You know, in the Christian tradition, there is a mythology of Satan that's not from the Bible, but there's a story, maybe you've heard of, about Satan, or Lucifer was the highest of the angels, and then God wanted them to bow down to God, and Lucifer refused, and that got him kicked out of heaven. What I find fascinating about the story that's actually repeated a number of times in the Quran was that this bowing. I mean, God creates humanity, and then it tells the angels and the beings of heaven to bow down to humanity, and the angels actually react. They're like, "Are you kidding? I mean, these people, like, they're imperfect. They will do evil. They will commit murder." And God says, "You know, I'm aware of things that you're not." And so then they all bow down, except Iblis, you know, I'm much better. You know, these are imperfect people, and so he gets booted out. And to me, there's really interesting wisdom there about the nature of evil, in the sense that it comes from the sense of self-righteousness. Like, I am better than them. And in so doing, I mean, you know, he was focusing on our imperfections, and there's no way I'm going to bow down to these imperfect people. But really what was being asked was not to bow down, in a sense, to us. It was to bow down to the perfection of God's will to create us and God's love for us. And he refused, just concentrating on our imperfections, and then gets booted out. And to me, I can feel that in my gut. Like, every time I will kind of be persuaded to demonize another person or another group of people, believe them to be less able to feel love and grace and exercise those free will and so forth than myself, that's when I feel it, you know, that tendency. Well, what are you going to do with that feeling? I would actually push back a little bit on Aryeh. Of course, he's not here to defend himself, so but it's just a gentle pushback. You know, he was talking about really playing no role, Satan. Nowadays, I've found as the older I get, the more persuaded I am that there is a power, an evil power, which I didn't used to believe in at all. You know, how could a good God, you know, create a power, or how could there be a power when God created everything? But, you know, then I realized, well, Jesus himself believed in Satan. And I thought, well, I'm not smarter than he is. You know, and Jesus, in the 8th chapter of John, calls Satan the father of lies. And, you know, there's where, you know, whether Satan is some sort of being or not, there's where I really connect with that Satan, you know, if there is such a being, has no ability to create. That's only God is creative. But the only thing Satan can do is take something good and then twist it. You turn it in such a way that we then, who want to do good in the world, actually end up doing evil because we are believing a lie about something. And we begin to act on those inclinations. There I can see Satan happening all the time. And really, if there was no intelligent power to oppose the good, I mean, I would think that we'd all be sitting here in kind of nirvana right now. But instead, life experience suggests something very, very different. Let's take a look at temptation from these perspectives and hear from Rabbi Ari Arzuel again.
I think we clergy have to be very, very conscious for this trap. I think definitely I'm not talking about completely being selfless. All of us have egos. but I definitely think that sometimes in the way we are leading our people, I think we need to invite more people to be able to do exactly what we are doing. I don't. So I know that there is a little bit difference in the word we use. I remember hearing you saying about the calling. Uh, I only understand the calling now after at age 65, after being 33 years in the rabbinate. But in the beginning, it looked like a good job. But the danger is that you are not there to be the one that interferes between the person sitting in the pew and God. And I think sometimes some of us, and I'm taking this on myself because I know you are better than me. Sometimes we are the partition, we are the wall, we are the obstacle that some of our people have in getting it, because it's really easy to create relationship to God, especially after you become learned, educated, you understand the complexity of the text. Judaism is a text-centered religion. So there is a way through the study of the text, through the sitting around the table and learning together, where we need to learn how to shrink ourselves and really be part of the congregation. So I don't look at myself as a spiritual leader. I don't think my job is to be a spiritual director. I think my job is just to introduce people, immerse them into the study so they can have the same experiences that I'm so privileged and thankful of having. It's an interesting, and it's a very, very thin line, and we need to be careful of crossing it. I'm talking about myself as a rabbi. I have members in the congregation similar to what you have that are a lot smarter than who we are. Once upon a time, all of the Judaic material, all Judaism was in the rabbi, because the rabbi was one of those learned people. We have people now all over that with a click of a button, they can learn and exercise everything that I spend years in learning in a seminary. So we need to be able to maybe look at our role and invite everyone to be a teacher, to be a mentor. I think everyone has the capability and the power to be able to do it. We just need to let go of half of the evil inclination and half of the good inclination, and understand that those inclinations can reject, push people away, or embrace.
I think that's very insightful and really comes from kind of reflected in the passage itself, in the Jesus' temptations, because Rabbi Azrael is not talking about being tempted by something that's overtly evil. He's actually talking about being tempted by things that are good, that actually creates a block, in his own congregation with his members' experience of God. And you look at Jesus' temptations, the Satan is not tempting him with something that's overtly evil. He's tempting him with, turn the stone into bread, which isn't simply saying, hey, overcome your hunger. I mean, somebody with the spiritual stature of Jesus is not going to be tempted by, relieving his hunger pangs. It's really about, focus your ministry on feeding the world. And of course, Jesus does feed people, but doesn't make that the focus of his whole ministry. Same thing with, gain political power. Bow down to me and I'll give you all the political power. Well, Jesus does exercise political power during his ministry, but the Satan's trying to get him to focus all his energy on just doing that. I mean, wouldn't it be great if Jesus was president? We didn't have to worry about Congress and the Senate and everything. Jesus could just make all the rules. But he avoids that temptation. And then there's the temptation to jump off the top of the temple and let the angels save him. I mean, so that there would be no need for faith anymore. You would only have certainty that he was the Messiah. And of course, Jesus does do miracles, but to focus his whole ministry would have created this horrible situation, once again, in the loss of free will. So he avoids these three temptations. They're all temptations to do good, not evil. I know that there's a verse in the Quran that says something very similar.
Yes, indeed. The God has obviously indicated that, we will be tempted. But the ayat in Quran specifically states that we will tempt you with good and bad. And always struck me that the good precedes the bad. That is, the temptation to move away from the path of God is not because of the difficulties and the troubles which we all have in our life, and we sometimes worry and think about whether the God is punishing us for something we may have done, and there's a temptation to move away from God. But Quran emphasizes that temptation will also come from good, that you might be given power to exercise, you might be given resources to distribute. And this is very similar to what Eric just said, that you have this temptation of exercising good presumably by the orders of God. But that is a temptation by itself.
Yeah, I would guess that probably 99.9% of all the evil that's created in the world, I'm sure there must be 1/100% somewhere, but I don't see it, but I'm just assuming, but is all about the temptation to do good, even when we're doing really radical evil. I remember when I wrote the book Asphalt Jesus, I wrote a section of the book, and my publisher actually insisted I take it out because they thought it would be too controversial. And I kind of regret that in some ways, although it gives me more material to put in a future book. But what I wrote was, I was actually speculating if I were Satan, if I could do something that would undermine everything that Jesus came to stand for, what would I do? And I realized that I would only do one thing, and I would tell one lie, and that's it. I'd be happy. I could go home and consider my work done. And the lie I would tell is I would insert into the human consciousness the suggestion, just the possibility, not even the certainty, but just the possibility that if you don't please the God of your understanding in a certain way, you will be tortured for all of eternity. And that would undo everything Jesus came for. And the reason it would is because any reasonable person would have to say, well, my gosh, there's at least a chance I'm not doing what the God I know wants me to do. So there's a chance that I might be tortured for all of eternity. And so we would then rush trying to find the absolute certainty that we will not go there. We would just flock to, for instance, a book that would be claimed to be the inerrant, literal Word of God. Saying, okay, now I've got my certainty, but I would also know as Satan that there is no such thing as something that is inerrant, that's created by human beings, that there would be contradictions in this very book, and therefore it would cause more stress, and then it would cause leaders to arise to say, you know what, I know the true way the Bible's talking. Follow me, and I'll give you the clear word of the Bible. So it would create these very powerful leaders who promised basically a fire escape. And then it would also turn within me if I were to buy into that lie as a human being, it would also turn every bit of love that I have and compassion for others into something that's very twisted. Because if I thought that you were going to hell for disobeying God in some way, then I would need to, if I love you, to do everything I can, by hook or by crook, to get you into heaven, right? And so it turns every bit of love into an act of fear. And how can we ever love a God who will torture us for all eternity? It's impossible. And so then you're told, well, if you don't love this God, you'll go to hell. And it's actually impossible to love a God that would send you there. And that lie is a very powerful, powerful deception. Whenever you then fall into that lie, you start to also demonize other people, like the people who are convincing them not to follow the true way. When I walked across the country, I was terrified by the fact that even moderate Christians were believing that anybody who's not Christian would be thrown into hell for eternity. And there's a very short distance between that belief and actions that demonize others. And when you begin to demonize other people, saying, hey, these people are teaching people a wrong way, they're actually responsible for sending people to hell, you create a demon, I think. I mean, whether it's a metaphysical demon or not, there's certainly one demon you create when you demonize people, and that is a demon within yourself. Because that will always lead to an action, eventually, that is demonic. And then also it might create demonic tendencies in the people you're demonizing, because then, if they feel demonized, they're going to do what to you? They're going to, some of them will turn to demonize you. But that tendency is so fragile that you look at, there's a stack of books here. Some of you have seen this before. It affects Christians just as much as anybody else. I get worried today when I see, for instance, certain forms of fundamentalist Islam, the Wahhabism, who believe that only Muslims will go to heaven and the rest of us will go to hell, which is something you cannot find in the Quran, by the way. But I see this tendency in my own faith amongst that, when we cling to that idea that we're the ones who go to heaven and everybody else is going to hell. So this stack of books here was written. It's called the Theological Word Book of the New Testament, and it is a long article on every single word of the New Testament, every single word, written by one person named Kittel. He was a German biblical scholar. Now you'd think that somebody who has spent that much time and contemplation over every single word of Jesus and every single word of Paul, every single word, in fact, that appears in the New Testament, he would be like the holiest person around, right? Kittel became a Nazi. A Nazi. I think that when Rabbi Azrael talks about it, it's easy to bring a Jew out of Egypt, but it's hard to get Egypt out of the Jew. Is a word for all of us, for Muslims, for Christians, for Jews. The only way to take Egypt out of us really is to embrace a God who loves us beyond our wildest imagination and determined to live our life according to that discovery.
I think, that's very true. And I'm not sure what book the Wahhabis are reading, but Quran repeatedly says there is no compulsion in religion. Secondly, it repeatedly emphasizes that Islam is not a new religion. It is the same message which was given to Moses. It's the same message which was given to Ibrahim, and the same message which was given to Prophet Jesus. And this is just a renewal of a call from God. And that it specifically states that the God we worship is the same God of Ibrahim, the same God of Moses, and the same God of Jesus. So I'm not sure where this idea comes that only the Muslims are going to heaven. It also, Quran indicates that messengers from God have been sent to all parts of the universe, and that those people who believe in God, those who believe in Day of Judgment, have nothing to fear.
Well, it's wonderful when that judgment is all from a love that exceeds our ability to comprehend. Well, thank you, Saeed, so much for joining us once again this Sunday. And
Thank you, Rick, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
thanks.